We often imagine that we can turn our art into tangible reality, and fiction reflects that. Right off the top of my head, I can recall several characters who do that. Brush Shogun from the Teen Titans cartoon, Saburo from Sergeant Frog, Pygmalion from Mythology. Kei Kawade is what you get when you ask, what if we made an artist who can draw creatures into life as superhero? Welcome, my friends, to the Kid Kaiju Retrospective. The 2010s were an interesting time to be a Marvel fan. We saw an explosion of legacy characters, the most iconic of which was Miles Morales taking the mantle of Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe. One of the other major developments that affected Marvel at the time was the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because 20th Century Fox controlled the X-Men, the guys in suits decided to push another franchise about a race of superhumans, the Inhumans. In the 2013 event titled Infinity, we see Black Bolt fight Thanos. During his battle, Black Bolt set off a Terrigen bomb. Terrigen Mist gave Inhumans their powers, and thus thousands of people who were descendants from ancient Inhumans ended up getting powers. This era was controversial among Inhuman fans and X-Men fans alike, and I can see why. The X-Men fans felt like the mutants were being replaced. We even saw mutants be brought to the brink of extinction by Mpox, since apparently Terrigen Mists are toxic to them now. The Inhumans also saw a genre shift. The Inhumans originally debuted in the pages of Fantastic Four, and they were more of a high-concept era. We went from this more high-concept setting with the Inhumans with its caste-based strife and eugenics-based society, which felt so alien to us, the reader. And then we shifted that to a more urban fantasy style, which you expect from X-Men stories, such as governments not accepting the Inhumans, and Inhumans being rounded up. Kei Kawade is one of these new Inhumans. His debut took place in the pages of Totally Awesome Hulk as a cameo. This was the part of a legacy character boom I was talking about. Longtime supporting cast member Amadeus Cho became a legacy character for the Hulk. At the time, we didn't know who this mysterious boy was until 2017, which saw Monsters Unleashed, an event which saw the Marvel Universe go up against Titan-sized monsters called Leviathans. And yes, I'm going to be pronouncing it that way because that's how it's written. These creatures fell from the sky as meteors and emerged as giant monsters. Elsa Bloodstone very much says this is the end of the world. She's the premier monster hunter of the Marvel Universe, and frankly, the end of the world is just another Tuesday. We are initially led to believe Kai's power is that he can summon whatever he draws, and that's his only power. What he draws the most are monsters. He's not summoning the Leviathans. Marvel already has a legacy of giant monsters. He's summoning those giant monsters to fight the Leviathan tide. The limits of his capabilities are not explained in the event, or any story for that matter, being deliberately left ambiguous because we want to have a story to tell. Elsa asks what exactly happens when he draws a corpse, for example, which goes unanswered because he doesn't draw corpses and we have a story to tell. But the Leviathan Mother arrives with her main force. They all have Kai try to draw and summon monsters from all over the world, but it's pretty clear that the amount of Leviathans that are coming is just too much. Moon Girl convinces him that he's more than just a summoner, he's a monster maker, and each one of these monsters is uniquely designed by an artist who contributed to the series, which is an interesting touch. Although one of Kai's monsters ends up dying, I think Fireclaw was made by Greg Land. He then combines the 5 others into Smasher and proceeds to win the battle, cutting the Leviathan Mother in two. Kai says goodbye to the other monsters he summoned, and the monsters he made settle down on the island of Mu. Get it? Because Monsters Unleashed? My personal thoughts on the event is rather mixed. I do like the idea of a kid who can draw monsters becoming a superhero. On the other hand, it runs into the issue of being an origin story mixed in with an event comic. Event comics hype themselves up tremendously as the next big thing, meaning this is a shift that focuses away from the main character to show the scope of the event. Also, when your origin story has you stop an army of giant monsters hellbent on leveling Earth, the only place you can really go in terms of dramatic effect is down. So, what happened to Kai after this series? Monsters Unleashed got a monthly series that ran for 12 issues. And a side effect of using less lines on the characters is that they particularly look younger. It works here since it does emphasize that Kai is 11 years old. The first story arc consists of 5 issues. These issues see Kai adjust to his new life on the island of Mu and faces off against new Intelligencia. That consists of the leader, MODOK, Awesome Android, Mad Thinker, and Mr. Sinister. As you expect with someone with his powers, all of these guys want to use his power for themselves. After all, when a kid can draw monsters into existence, I'm sure all of them would like to dissect both Kai and the monster, Mr. Sinister in particular. Also, since they're not stupid, they do have failsafes in their machine to prevent him from doing anything funny. They just didn't expect Elsa Bloodstone and the Mole Man to help him escape. Just in time to face the new combining Leviathan, yet the new Intelligencia decided to experiment on them. The new Intelligencia ends up arrested by the end of this arc, although this is Marvel Comics, so the prison is made out of popsicle sticks and glue. The next arc is titled And Lo, There Came a Poison, where we see Kai drawing in his sleep. He's drawing Fin Fang Foom, but he's not right. This is a version taken over by a poison. Poisons are a species who are the symbiotes to the symbiotes. As symbiotes assimilate a host, the poisons assimilate the symbiotes. The symbiotes are these slimy creatures, in contrast to the poison, who are more cartilaginous. This arc focuses mainly on Kai's growing fear of his own power, because nobody, not even him, knows the limits of his own power. Combined with the fact that Poison Fin Fang Foom is messing with his mind, he does end up summoning the monster. Why are they after Kai? Because, as the monster maker, he can essentially make cattle for the poisons. After dealing with being used by the new Intelligencia, Kai isn't exactly emotionally ready to be used by another set of villains, this time with mind control powers. He's pretty stressed and emotionally closed off himself from others until it spirals into a problem he cannot solve. But the actual Fin Fang Foom helps him defeat the poison Fin Fang Foom and helps him regain his confidence. In the next arc, it's titled Learning Curve, and this is where we get some more interesting developments on the monster end. While we did hint in other arcs, Kai's monsters do have their own thoughts, feelings, and personalities, and they may or may not have been created since they do have memories that are inconsistent with Kai creating them. Rather than have a connected arc, these are more spotlights for the individual monsters. Scrag fighting giant bees, Aegis fighting a cult who is trying to raise not Cthulhu, Makarov getting to fight a giant life force drinker on the moon, Hyvo getting a voice. Oh, and he meets Miss Mech in this one. I don't have much to say about her since she only attacks him in like issue 12 and then tries to base her reality as a superhero off of anime. She's also an inhuman who can create mechs. That's it. I mentioned the poisons earlier, but they don't invade the Marvel Universe proper until venomized. Kai is one of our targets because the aforementioned cattle maker for the poisons. However, he's not as important of a character in this only because he only shows up for some action scenes from issue 2 to issue 5. Besides Scrag dying, he's not that big of a player. The poisons are disposed of by Jean Grey. Okay, some context. Jean Grey is a teenager because Beast was stupid and decided time travel was the best way to fix Cyclops, who went rogue. Okay, enough about the stupid teenage X-Men thing. Let's move on to Kai's next appearance in Marvel Monsters. The plot involves Kai sneaking into a castle in the Baltic Sea where he discovers something. A book filled with monster anatomy. I am also not a fan of Hepburn's artwork for the human characters, it just looks off. The book is basically an art expose on the Marvel Monsters. This is where the artwork of his book shines, so the plot is pretty much set up. The two fight, and Max takes off, ending the book on a cliffhanger that won't be resolved since Max ends up with the X-Books to torment the X-Men. This is Kai's last appearance in Marvel Comics as a whole, so what about his appearances in other media? Kai shows up in Marvel Feature Fight in 2017. I only mention this because they gave him a bizarrely looking alt. Meanwhile, he does have a couple of appearances in Marvel's Future Avengers, an anime about 3 children who were created by Hydra genetic engineering but end up joining the Avengers. Kai doesn't appear until Season 2, which focuses on the Inhumans. Season 2 episodes 4 and 5 serve as a retelling of his origin story, albeit simplified because this isn't an event comic. Strange monsters are attacking the cities, the heroes fight them, and now new monsters join the fight against the original monsters. Now, this time, it's Kai's monsters and not the other kaiju of the Marvel Universe who are doing the supporting. The Avengers suspect Kai is involved in some way and leads to a small misunderstanding, as in they narrowly avoid a full-on monster brawl, and then they get their butts kicked by the Leviathan mother, and yes, she is called Leviathan, not Leviathan. No, I will not get over that. And the Leviathan mother ends up getting defeated, and Kai and his kaiju end up on an island. He would later cameo in episode 11. Also, he's voiced by Bryce Papenbrook, which explains why I expected Kai to yell Cataclysm, like, at the end for some reason. I do enjoy Kai as a concept, but I had mixed feelings about Monsters Unleashed as a whole. Of the 23 single issues Kai appeared in, 9 of them were part of Event Comics, and 1 of them was a cameo. As I said, when you have a world-shattering event like Monsters Unleashed, you're going to end up diluting some focus away from Kai. That's probably why I like the future Avengers take on him more. He feels much more like he has a presence, and so do his kaiju. Meanwhile, he's what amounts to a background character in the other event, Venomized. Then let's look at his supporting cast. His main supporting cast member is Elsa Bloodstone, who is Marvel's monster hunting expert. While she does act as somewhat of a mentor figure for him, I would much rather Kai do some of the fighting himself rather than have Elsa do it, as it does make it seem more personal if he's doing the fighting and not her. I would also say Kai's parents, but I don't think of them as much more than footnotes in this. And of course, the monsters. Does Kai have any friends his own age? Not really. There's Moon Girl, but they didn't interact that much outside the original event in the final issue of the monthly series. I know they interacted in Venomized, but it wasn't like the original event or the final issue of the monthly series. So, what about villains? One of the benefits of having an interconnected universe is that the villains can antagonize multiple heroes. One of the disadvantages of that is that the villains may not be unique to one character or one franchise, and thus depriving a hero of a good arch-nemesis. The new Intelligencia suffer this issue because they were villains of other heroes and iconic ones at that. The Leader is a Hulk villain. The Mad Thinker is a Fantastic Four villain. Mr. Sinister is an X-Men villain. MODOK is a free-floating villain who antagonizes everyone, and Awesome Andy, I think, is very much in the same boat. You expect Max Frankenstein to take this mantle. After all, his stint as an X-Men villain was, unsatisfactory, so him antagonizing Kai makes a lot more sense, because thematically, Max is also a monster maker, albeit one with way less scruples. So, what exactly should be done with Kai from now on? Here's my thoughts on the matter. I think we should really flesh out the supporting cast and villains more. If I had my way, I would go with a Shijima Mei type character. If you don't know, Shijima Mei is a character from Toilet-bound Hanako-kun who can paint out entire worlds and entrap people in them. This is exactly what happens in the picture-perfect arc of Toilet-bound Hanako-kun. I think this would be a good contrast to Kai's powers. Kai can pull monsters out of their worlds and into his, and Shijima, as an analog, can pull characters into her world. I think a Shijima-type character would be great at making unique battle environments like the Witch Labyrinth from Madoka. I believe Max Frankenstein really should have been Kai's arch-nemesis from the start, since the contrast between them makes the most sense. We have a mad scientist fighting an artist. I never really found any of the Hellfire brats that compelling, so I think Max can be revamped into a more comical villain. Also, let's give Kai some training so that he can actually do some of the fighting alongside his monsters. Also, I do want a Shadow of the Colossus style fight scene where he is on Smasher fighting someone else on another Titan, which... rule of cool. I also say they should develop the monsters more, but the book was going in that direction, giving Kai moments with the individual kaiju, but then it got canned. I do believe we can have something really unique, interesting, and merchandisable if we gave him a more unique cast and fleshed out the monsters a bit better. But those are just my thoughts. Please consider liking, subscribing, and tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.